we have one more video to react to today. And those who have been following my streams, my content for a while, know that this is a topic that I've talked about on multiple occasions, that I feel a certain way about, that I feel pretty strongly about, and that I think is a valid issue to discuss. I stumbled upon this video in my YouTube homepage, The Problem with Male Characters in Gacha. And we're gonna react to it. Because there is a problem with male characters in gacha games. Said problem being, among others, that there just barely are any. So let's go. Lighter! Ah, Brand. Wish I could have gotten a chance to get attached to you.
Ever since the launch of Hoyo vs. Genshin Impact, the gacha gaming audience has never been as large and diverse as it is today.
True.
What was once a medium of game catered primarily towards straight male demographics has now become a medium for all people alike. And naturally, this has affected Hoyo's portfolio moving forward, as we moved away from the female cast of Honkai Impact 3rd to the varied cast of Genshin Impact, then Honkai Star Rail, and now Zenless Zone Zero. As these titles become more widespread about the day, their audiences become even more varied than ever before, so much so that the medium as a whole has experienced developments that no one would have expected. Example being the widely renowned gacha game Love and Deed Space from the developer Infold, a title well known for its male cast that caters primarily towards straight female audiences.
Yes. I mean, to be fair, before that we also had Tears of Themis, which is also, as far as I know, an otome gacha. And although it is a gacha game, I would not necessarily put it in the same category as games like Genshin, ZZZ, Wuwa and stuff, because Love and Deep Space is like specifically an ultimate game. It is designed to be dating sim alike.
The fact that a game such as this was able to compete on the same level as Hoyoverse shows just how much the gacha gaming medium has evolved over these years. Yet, despite these developments, there has been some discourse stirring in the gacha gaming circle as of late. While yes, there definitely has been a larger variety of characters than ever before, some players still express concern regarding the cast of these titles, most notably, the lack of male characters.
Yep.
And the lack of melanin, but that's a topic for another day. Of course, I don't think this should be surprising. As I said, the gacha gaming medium was originally built upon catering towards straight males,
originally,
abundance of female characters, while male characters remain the outliers.
Which, still weird because, why should straight men not be able to enjoy men? Like, that's just like really never mind at this point. Sure, boobs, tits and ass, whatever, fan service, whatever, but like, these are the same kind of people that would complain about a female protagonist in like AAA games, you know? Like, make it make sense.
But the year is 2025, with titles such as Genshin Impact and Honkai Star Rail creating some of the most popular male characters that gacha games have ever seen.
Sunday Mentor!
So we ask the age-old question. Is the lack of male characters really a problem in the gacha gaming space? Or is it just a non-issue that is blown up by a loud minority?
It is a problem. For sure. Is it like a groundbreaking, like, is it a fucking disaster? Is it a crisis? No. It is nothing to like get extremely heated over and to like go to like extremes over, of course, as pretty much any gacha topic is. But it is a problem. Within the gacha sphere, it is a problem. You are right, Drapslayer. The lack of sample Kozuki is also very disturbing. I think every game should have a sample Kozuki.
Let's talk about the problem with male characters in gacha games.
Yep.
To better capture the concerns regarding the cast of these games, let's run through the numbers of the previously mentioned titles, diving into each of their gender ratios, and this is excluding protagonists and their separate forms. In games such as Honkai Impact 3rd and Love and Deed Space, their roster is exclusively made up of one gender, that being female and male respectively. No surprises there. In Genshin Impact, the roster as of version 5.7 is composed of 34 males and 54 females, for a total of 88 characters, making that a gender ratio of roughly 1 to 1.5.
Yeah, like, usually it varies, but it's roughly 1 to 2, roughly.
which is rather healthy for a gacha game on this scale. In Honkai Star Rail, the roster as of version 3.3 is composed of 24 males and 46 females, for a total of 70 characters,
Similar.
making that a gender ratio of almost 1 to 2. A bit more imbalanced than its predecessor, but I would still say that is within reason. In Zenless Zone Zero, however, the roster as of version 2.0 is composed of 9 males and 27 females, for a total of 36 characters, making that a gender ratio of an equal 1 to 3.
Mm-hmm. However, the thing with that is, while yes, that is true, ZZZ, it's not as noticeable. Because, and this is a point that I'm going to touch upon more later, yes, we do have more women than men in ZZZ. Quite a bit in comparison to other games. But number one, the cast in general is just smaller. You know, it's 9 to 27. You know, we don't have like 60, 70 to 100 characters in the game yet. And number two, the male characters are relevant. Like, 1/2 of 1.7 has literally been all about Hugo and, by association, Lycon. Same with 1.6. 2.0 was more so Yixuan focused. We had, what's his name? Yixuan, I think is his name. And Pan Yinhu, here and there. We've had Damien, here and there. But they've been there. You know, they've been present. Which is why usually at least in DZZ, I haven't noticed it a lot so far. Because these characters, they have presence, you know? Male characters still get their own story quests and stuff, so yeah.
This is the most egregious example among the Horrorverse titles, with 9 male characters that include the likes of Lycon and the Bears. Now there is one more gacha game that I want to discuss, because I think this game has also been in the limelight as of late, especially regarding this gender ratio discourse.
Ah, yes.
I want to talk about Kuro Games' Wuthering Waves, a title that was released around the same time as that.
Yes.
I want to talk about Kuro Games' Wuthering Waves.
Kuro Games, Wuthering Waves.
A title that was released around the same time as that of Zenless Zone Zero. Looking at the numbers, as of version 2.4, Wuthering Waves has a roster that is composed of 8 males and 25 females, for a total of 33 characters, making that a gender ratio of just above 1 to 3, which is actually worse than that of ZZZ's. And when you take into account future characters that were teased, the ratio is looking rather bleak for Wuwa. And even if these ratios may not look too bad to some folk, there has been plenty of recent discussion regarding the lack of male characters.
Not just the lack of male characters, but the lack of male character representation. The reason why Wuwa sticks out so much more in comparison to Hoyoverse games is because Wuwa's men literally have no reason to exist. Apart from maybe Scar. And that's a hard maybe. No male character has like any relevance. Unfortunate as it is, you could remove like every male character from the game. Besides maybe Jian and Scar, you could remove every man from the game and there would be no real difference because they have no real plot relevance. They barely appear at all. Brad, don't listen to... Bean, you've played Wuwa, the story. How much screen time has Brand had in this, like in the 2.x story so far? How much relevant screen time has he had? Genuine question. Because from what I've seen, it is not much. It is not a lot. At this point, like, Wuwa, they may as well just fucking remove their male characters. They may as well fucking gender bend them. And add them to the fucking Rover harem. Because we don't even get that. We don't even get the the Rover harem treatment with the men. No, it's all just like they're friends and they're bros and they, you know, they're cool with each other. Except for Scar, who is obsessed with Rover. Rightfully, well, not necessarily rightfully so, but you know, we stand simping obsessive king in fiction. Only 3 males get an okay amount of screen time. 3? Jian had screen time early on in like 1.0. Scar had screen time in like 1.0. Shang Liao got an event and then ceased to exist. Calcharo didn't even get a story quest as far as I recall. He just appeared. Ling Yang, I think was his name, got a story quest and nothing else. Yuan Wu spawned into existence for 2 seconds during a cutscene. Alto, yes. Alto got a good chunk I fucking love Alto. But when was the last time we've seen Alto have any sort of relevance after Act, was it 3, I think, of you know, the first big arc with him and Encore? Like, after that, nothing. And guess what? Those 3 characters were all 1.0. So the point stands.
This is more notable in a game like Genshin Impact, where despite having the most balanced ratio among the titles, players have still voiced their concerns about the lack of male characters. This is because, within the 5.x cast alone, there are only 4 new male characters in comparison to 12 new female characters.
And even then, Ororon, very present in all the Archon quests. Kinich, not as much. He was kind of just around. He could have gotten more. He did get some spotlight in the, what's it called? Whirling Waltz, the last Fontaine event. He did get some spotlight there. Aetha, kind of like our kind of like the Kave of Natlan, where we've known about him since like 5.0, I think, but we only met him in 5.5-ish. Dahlia, we've heard about, but he was in the Archon quest, at least a little bit. And even then, it didn't stick out as much, because the male characters that we had were at least to some extent story relevant. They had a presence. Plus, we had non-playable characters, yet, like Capitano, who had a very strong presence. Yeah, Wuma is generally like such a shame, because like, I didn't even know until recently that Mortefi and Shang Liao were supposed to be like friends or connected in any way, because Mortefi didn't even appear in Shang Liao's event, like, at all. In fact, I don't remember when he appeared last after the main quest, if ever.
With only one of them being a 5-star character.
That's true, yeah.
Another notable example is Wuthering Ways. Since the release of 1.0, there have only been 2 new male characters in comparison to 15 new female characters. And even though there is 1 more male character down the line, that's still only 1 new male character among 5 new female characters.
You can't even bring the argument that like, oh, maybe like 1.x Genshin was similar in that regard. No, it wasn't. Because the lore relevant characters that we got in 1.x were Venti, Zhongli, Albedo, Kaya, Child, Xiao. Diluc was there in the main story. He still has some relevance. I mean, Dainsleif, obviously, which already is like, what, 7, 8 characters? So, there's that.
On the contrary, we have titles like Honkai Star Rail, which technically has a worse gender ratio than that of Genshin Impact, yet at the same time, there isn't as much talk about this game's gender ratio. This is because, as of version 3.0, the players have already been introduced to 2 new male characters, Finon and Mighty, and even though they were not playable at the time, the prospect of them being playable in the future is enough to satiate the fans. And this is just shortly after the addition of Sunday, who is arguably one of the more popular characters in gacha games as of late. That is not to say that there are suddenly more males than females, however. Finon and Mighty are only 2 characters among a cast of 5, 6 if you include the Herda, 8 if you include all the Trivios. But because the male characters actually feel present in the game, in addition to the recent release of Anaxa, players are less likely to complain about an unbalanced gender ratio. Just look at how relevant a character like Finon is in HSR's story, and compare that
like now we know that they just threw all the budget at him.
To a character like Brant in Wuwa, who only really shows up every so often and doesn't contribute too much to the overall narrative. So
and
because
there it
of
is.
the characters that have been relevant in recent times, the lack of male characters is more noticeable than ever before, leading to rising concerns. Of course, this can all change on a whim. For all we know, these gacha games could decide to release 3 or 4 male characters back to back, and I'm sure someone out there is having an aneurysm at that thought.
Surely.
But as of the making of this video, the current trend of character releases leave much to be desired for those who do want a more balanced gender ratio, or even just another male character or 2.
And I'm not gonna lie, this exact issue is also why I am so incredibly disinterested in like most, if not all, of the new gacha games coming out. Because you see the gacha game and you're like, hey, you know, like the environment looks pretty, the animations, the aesthetics, it all looks like very pretty, very nice. And then you watch the trailer and there's like 10 women, and if you're lucky, 1 or maybe like a very off chance, 2 men. And they appear for like 0.5 seconds. Which is why, like, I don't care about Ananta, I don't care about Silver Palace, I don't really care about, what's it called? Neverness to Everness. I don't really care about any of these games. As pretty as the women may look, like just from a variety standpoint, it's just so boring. The only new gacha game that I'm interested in so far is, what's it called? I think Rewinding Cadence. Because while that game also seems to have a mainly female cast, it also has a female protagonist. And that probably means that said female character is going to have their own personality. She's not going to be like a big self-insert, at least not for men. And listen, I'll say it. The fact that not only do most of these upcoming gacha games have mainly women, but also the fact that you can choose a male character, that just adds on to it. Because you know how fucking annoying people are going to be about it. And you know how annoying the devs can be about it if they go the woo-wah route of making every other woman fall in love with the MC. So I'm just tired of it, you know? Like, that's what it boils. I'm just tired of that formula. Also, none of these pretty environments and good writing helps if the characters devolve into protagonist sims at some point. Exactly. Like, character dynamics are so incredibly important. If the characters don't have, like, fleshed out, well-written relationships with each other, I could not care less. So there's that as well. I would rather have like 99% of the cast being against the MC and have them all really good interaction with other characters. Same. Instead of the opposite. Yeah, dude. I'll have characters that are like hostile to the MC like 24/7, but they have an established good relationship with each other any day of the week. It gives these characters so much more depth. Also, Zenless kind of has been doing that, but it has been mostly the fandom since most of the characters sim for both proxies, so I don't know. But even then, it's both proxies, and it's like both genders, you know? This man right here is literally the #1 fucking proxy simp. Anyway, let's continue. Lighter, my beloved. Ride or die for proxy and brother you can die.
Why exactly are male characters less common? This may seem obvious, but there are some semantics to discuss. Despite the explosion of new players onto the gacha scene, who come from all walks of life, a majority of the gacha gaming circle is still primarily made up of straight males, which shouldn't be a surprise given that this demographic was what the medium was initially built upon. Just because the circle has become more diverse doesn't mean that the core audience has left. In fact, it has only grown ever since, no thanks to the growing popularity of gacha games.
Yes. But, you know, then there's also the question, like, why do we still have more men than women? Is it maybe, among other things, because there is nothing enticing for women to really get into? There is nothing for women to really, like, sink their teeth into like there is for that specific male audience, you know?
This would also entail the growth of other demographics that may still prefer female characters over male characters, such as lesbians or Path to Nowhere fans. And because these demographics make up for a majority of the audience, female characters tend to guarantee a profit more often than not, whereas male characters bring less so.
At least that is the argument. And I call bullshit on that exact argument until the male characters actually consistently get the exact same treatment as female characters. Once the male characters get the same attention, the same plot relevance, the same marketing as the female cast, then you can compare the two. Other than that, you literally cannot make that comparison because it makes no sense.
Here's a food for thought. Do the developers behind these titles bank on their predominantly male audience to cash in on a male character? Or do they just play it safe and make another female character that is more likely to raise their profit margins? Of course, they are going to take the safe route, because as bleak as it is, these gacha games are meant to make money. Well, all games do, but gacha games especially. And as much as we can say devs listened, they can only listen so much until they need to invest into another nuclear reactor.
Listen, devs listened, but who do they listen to?
I mean, be player friendly. And that's not even covering other factors, such as female characters often being given more time and attention by the developers. HSR may have been better about this whole ordeal, but that's not to say it is completely for your fault. Take a look at their version 3.2,
yep,
where Casters was given all the love and care in her design, her kit, and her marketing. She even received an exclusive animation to goad players into pulling her when they first launched the update. Now compare that to Anaxa, the other character of version 3.2, who couldn't even afford a unique animation for his follow-up attack.
And even then, personally, I would say he was more story relevant than Castor's was.
And they are both considered anniversary characters, by the way. Another factor that favors female characters over male characters is the meta. If we take another look at HSR, you notice that all the meta-defining characters have been female. Ron May, Acheron, Robin, Firefly, the Herda, Tribby, Castris. They all have shifted the meta in some meaningful way. And while there definitely are male characters who are great on their own accord, rarely are they ever considered meta-defining, aside from maybe Sunday. But even then, his potential has yet to be fully realized. Now, Finon could potentially uproot this trend, but he would be an outlier rather than being the norm. And this applies not just to HSR, but to most of these other gacha games as well. So with all this in mind, am I saying that the only way to get more male characters is just to drop more money on them? Everything I said up to this point does trend towards that conclusion, right?
It's part of it,
well, maybe. But at the end of the day, this is all just purely hypothetical. Not to sound like a hypocrite, but I want to clarify that the revenue argument is not completely sound. It is an objective fact that female characters make more money. But it is also an objective fact that they tend to release more often than male characters, which means those who want to pull female characters will naturally have to spend more.
That, and again, they just invest more in the female characters. That's just how it is. So obviously they sell better.
They're not going to have enough free pulls to get most,
yeah, the one pulls are like very basic.
Whereas those who want to pull male characters are given more time to save their spendings. Of course, that doesn't stop them from pulling female characters and vice versa, but the fact stands. Female characters are granted more spending opportunities than male characters are. Besides this, you also have to ask the question, why would fans of male characters want to spend money on these games when said games don't look to respect their wishes in the first place?
Literally, I log into WooWa, I pull for only the male character, and I log back out and I leave the game to rot until the next male character releases, because that's literally all I can do, because nothing else entices me about that game.
A game like WooWa is already on track to releasing only 2 or 3 male characters a year. Male characters that are most likely going to be sidelined by their female counterparts. So why would these fans even bother financially supporting the game? Why would anyone want to gamble their money on the hopes that these games add more male characters when that was never a guarantee in the first place? This whole argument of husbando fans need to spend more money to get more husbandos has always been hypothetical with no concrete evidence.
And like there's no point, you know? That argument makes no real sense. Because there's no guarantee that they won't just pump that money into more waifus, into more female characters that are like the same formula over and over.
Just look at Genshin Impact. I can't say for certain that characters like Ito, Ayato, and Sino sell banners, and the female characters have always outsold their male counterparts.
And still, Ito is one of their favorite children. To this day, he is everywhere. Sino is our resident TCG freak. Although it's been a while since he's been around, you know? But even then, even these characters have a presence.
Yet, Genshin still chose to debut several 5-star male characters almost back to back. So clearly,
I love that.
Genshin still chose to debut several 5-star male.
3.x especially was like stacked with male characters. We had the whole Aggravate quartet. We had Alhaitham, Kaveh, Tignari, and Sino. We had Wanderer, Baiju in 3.6. That's 6 characters. Fontaine, we had Linny, Nuvilet, Risley, Sethos, Fremine, although, you know, less present, but he was still there. That's still 5.
Characters almost back to back. So clearly, sales did not determine the output of their characters. And if revenue was the sole reason as to why male characters are less common, then why not create more male 4-star characters? Characters like Yuhu and Lumi were never going to sell banners. So if a game were to release 4-star characters, having some be male wouldn't conflict with anyone's interest.
And also, okay, he's gonna get to it. And also, Gallagher, literally one of the best sustains in the fucking game. To this day.
Were to release 4-star characters, having some be male wouldn't conflict with anyone's interest. And that's another female 4-star character, isn't it?
Yep.
Regardless of whether we agree or disagree with these reasons, at the end of the day, we can only guess as to why gacha games are hesitant to release more male characters. With that being said, should players just not voice their opinions for more male characters? This may just be me trying to be optimistic, but even with the so-called lack of male characters, there are still more of them nowadays than there was some time ago. Going back to Hoyoverse, Their road to acclaim started with titles that only featured female characters, a direction that they could have just continued. Yet instead, they decided to take a risk. In Honkai Impact 3rd, they proposed the idea of playable male characters, albeit to a rather cold reception, but then decided to release titles like Tears of Themis, which is the complete opposite of their prior games.
Which I will say, honestly, like, say what you will about Hoyoverse as a company. They're not perfect, they have their issues. But they don't give in to, like, incel rage and you know, fucking whining about whatever incels fucking rage about, whatever incels cry and bitch about every day. They don't really give in to that unless it comes with, like, literal legal consequences, or, you know, like, it comes to literal, like, threats on someone's life. Except for, like, the extreme cases, they don't cater to those people. They do their thing, you know, for better or for worse. And listen, I'd rather they not listen at all than listen to that group of people more than anyone else. We're getting a Hoyo Pokemon game, true, with Blade in it. A man!
As well as this small little title known as Genshin Impact, choosing not to appeal
Small
to
little
just
indie
one
game.
audience, but rather to everyone. And even beyond just Hoyo's portfolio, take a look at Kuro Games' Punishing Grey Raven, a title that unapologetically took after Honkai Impact 3rd, and yet, they still chose to include male characters in their roster when they could have simply played it safe. Just ignore the last year or so of character releases. And
I was gonna say, like, isn't PGR also notoriously known for having, like, very few male characters?
that's not even mentioning some long-running titles that have had their fair share of beloved male characters, like Gilgamesh from Fate Grand Order, or Sandalphon from Grand Blue Fantasy. I'm sure that there are plenty of other examples that escape my mind, but the point stands. Change has happened before, and nothing is stopping change from happening now. Regardless of how discouraging it is to want more male characters, just know that the environment back then was much less receptive than it is today, and yet these games still somehow found a way to bring male characters into the fold. So long as players make their voices heard, then the developers would maybe, possibly consider listening. For example, with the recent announcements of Chu Yuan in Wuthering Waves, he has received an incredibly positive reception by not just global, but by CN as well. Revenue
As he
aside,
should.
if that isn't a telltale sign of male characters being in demand, then I don't know what is. The big takeaway from all of this is that people should obviously voice their opinions, so long as they are being rational. And this applies
And
to
respectful.
both ends, not just to Husbando fans. Because let me just say, telling someone to just go play Love and Deep Space is not a sound argument. For one, this does not apply to those who like both male and female characters, which is more common than not. And two, this assumes that male characters are the only thing they care about.
Again, Love and Deep Space is a separate category. Love and Deep Space is an ultimate game. It is, in essence, a dating sim. That is already an entire established genre. I want a game that has, like, ideally, and listen, it is unfortunate that I have to say that this is probably, like, extremely copious and it's never going to happen, but I want a game that has, at least roughly, a 1-to-1 ratio, where it's just equal across the board. Is that ever going to happen? Probably not. Am I still going to hope for it to happen? Yeah. Because the thing is also with these people that, like, go like, oh, just go play Love and Deep Space or whatever. Do you think we want male characters only to romance them? Do you think that is the only reason why we want that? Like, no. I couldn't care less about self-inserting into, you know, a female protagonist and then having, like, virtual dates with these fuckers. I couldn't care less about that. I want character interactions. I want these characters to be their own people, to not just... I don't want a reverse harem. I want a game that is like Hoyoverse games, like Wuwa. Well, maybe not like Wuwa. But, you know, that's like other story-based games that is not just catering to the romance aspect. I do think that these people are probably, like, projecting quite a bit. They probably mainly play these games that are heavily catered or heavily centered around a female cast. They probably play those games to self-insert and ship themselves with their favorite waifus. And they're just projecting that onto people who want more representation.
When in reality, male characters only make up for one of the reasons why they play certain games. Love and Deep Space is not going to have the gameplay of Punishing Grey Raven or Zenless Zone Zero. Love and Deep Space is not going to have the stories of Fate Grand Order or Honkai Star Rail. Love and Deep Space is not going to have the worlds of Genshin Impact or Wuthering Waves. You come to Love and Deep Space for Love and Deep Space. and Silas.
I like the look on your face right now.
And yes, I am
Dear
well aware
God.
that there are bad actors out there who do attack others in the name of more male characters. But let's not pretend that the rest of the gacha game community is a
Yep.
paradigm of virtue and goodwill, because on the other end, you have people attacking others just for simply saying that they want another male character or two, and they
Yep.
should all be rightfully condemned for such behavior. Again, players should voice their opinions so long as they are not being irrational to others. So if you do want more male characters in these games, you should absolutely express that. No one should tell you how to feel or think otherwise. And if they do and are acting malicious towards said opinion, it's best not to engage with them, especially if it's on the hellscape that is the formerly named Twitter.
Yep.
Now, if you couldn't tell from all my yapping, I personally do want more male characters in these games. Not so much as to bring the ratio to an equal 1-to-1, but just more than what we have now. Because despite being a straight male myself, I am of the belief that having more male characters brings more diverse designs and personalities to these games,
Yep,
which is
yep,
also the
yep.
same reason why I advocate for characters with more varied backgrounds and skin tones. I want to see the writers and artists behind these games stretch their creativity and imagination when it comes to creating new characters, because for me, having a varied roster is what makes a gacha game exciting. But regardless of what I personally want, I understand the circumstances as to why these gacha games are the way they are. They are a business at the end of the day, and they are naturally going to make decisions that yield them the best results. For some, that may be disappointing to hear, but that's just the unfortunate truth of things. However, that doesn't mean I can't still voice my own opinion, and neither should it mean others can't do the same.
Exactly.
If there is even a slight chance of the devs listening, then players should absolutely take that opportunity. And this doesn't just apply to the whole gender ratio thing either, but to other topics of discussion as well, especially when it comes to criticizing these games. So long as we voice our opinions with no malicious intent, that creates a better space to have discussion, rather than just being an outright war zone of people slinging insults and slurs at each other.
And listen, I've said it before, I'll say it again. If you actually care about your game, and if you actually want the game you're talking about to improve, then you're not gonna do this. Then you're actually gonna try to make people understand you. If you truly want to engage in a discussion and you truly want your opinions to be heard and respected, then you're gonna make an active effort to respect others in turn and understand their perspectives. Otherwise, I refuse to believe that you are. If you can't engage in a conversation, in a debate, discussion, respectfully, if you can't do it and you choose to do so anyway, I refuse to believe that you're being genuine, or you just need to stay the fuck away from any discussion and criticism until you learn how to do it, until you learn how to keep your composure.
Thank you to everyone who has tuned in. If you liked the video, then do please leave a like. If not, then a dislike will do. And subscribe to the channel if you want more. This has
was
been
great.
Keepers. Have a good rest of your day.
This was very good. Very, very good. Anything at the end here? No.
You know what always boggles my mind about husbando fans? The fact that they are always perceived as female players. Like, do gay players just not exist?
True!
Happy Pride Month, by the way.
I like this guy. Also, I gotta say, I do appreciate that it is a man talking about this topic. Because we all know how much less willing a certain group of people would be willing to listen than they already are if a woman was talking about these issues. We know if this was a woman, they would not give two fucks, and they would immediately be on the defensive. Based as hell. Happy Pride.